Tenestellan, my human family. Let's begin with a simple yet powerful truth. The vast majority of people walking this planet are of African descent. We are the global majority, a vibrant and resilient tapestry of Aboriginal cultures stretching across every continent. This isn't just a crucial fact, it is an international foundation for establishing global unification with tact. International diplomacy. It should mean that our voices, our needs, and our dreams are what shape the modern world in political equity, fairness. Yet, when we look around, we see a very different picture in global commerce. A small, entrenched group of global Jesuit, secret society of Greek Jesus, elites, a tiny fraction of the modern world's population, continues to hold the de facto reins of international political power, making decisions that affect billions of us without ever asking for our mutually informed consent. It's a strange and frustrating paradox, isn't it? The many being ruled by the Jesuit few. We were granted complete independence under the UN Decolonization Treaty of 1960. Across Africa and the Caribbean, our grandparents and great-grandparents fought and sacrificed for the dream of self-determination with cultural and spiritual autonomy. They raised new flags, sang new anthems, and envisioned a future where their children would be truly free from the evil continuation of British colonialism as a lawful human rights remedy. But was that independence fulfilled? For many former colonial countries under the Commonwealth realm jurisdiction today, the political chains of British colonialism were not broken in 1960. They were simply made invisible in deceitful and unlawful policies. The old systems of British control were cleverly repackaged and handed back to us, disguised as loans, trade agreements, and international aid in a system of bankruptcy. This neo-colonial Jesuit system, a modern form of British colonialism, keeps nations indebted and dependent, ensuring that generational wealth and resources continue to flow away from the many and into the hands of a select few Jesuits. This modern British control is built on a foundation of economic manipulation and religious Jesuit exploitation. Think about it like this: they create debt money out of thin air, lend it to our nations with impossible conditions to bear, and then watch as we struggle under the weight of ever-growing astronomical national debt with fear, false expectations appearing real. It's a brilliant but evil economic debt trap. It creates a cycle of artificially created poverty and dependence that feels almost impossible to escape in a democratic law society. This financial colonization ensures that even with political independence, true economic freedom remains just out of reach without human rights self-confidence. We are working harder than ever, yet the fruits of our labor seem to benefit distant corporations and institutions more than our own communities, leaving us running in place. So while we celebrate our Independence Days with parades and speeches, we must also ask the hard questions. Are we truly sovereign? Do we control our own natural resources, our own economies, and our own destinies? The reality is that these powerful Jesuit groups have maintained the old colonial political structures, just with a new name and a more polished appearance. They rely on our voluntary compliance, on us accepting this unfair Jesuit system as just the way things are. But it doesn't have to be this way. Recognizing this debt-based Jesuit illusion is the first, most crucial diplomatic step toward dismantling it and exercising the real freedom we were all born with individually in global commerce. So, how did the Jesuits maintain this geopolitical control? They use a rulebook that most of us were never taught to read. A key part of this playbook is the manipulation of law and commerce. But here's the good news. The system of global commerce has rules, and those rules can be used by the sovereign will of the people also. The most powerful tools we have is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights Charter. It's not just a fancy document sitting in a UN office. It's a divine promise made to every single individual on Earth in a sacred covenant. Specifically, Article 8 says that everyone has the international human birthright to an effective diplomatic remedy by the competent national tribunals for acts violating their fundamental rights and inherent dignity. This is our legal doorway to challenge geopolitical injustice. This brings us to something called the 10 Maxims of Global Commerce, which sound complicated, but are actually very simple principles of fairness. The first maxim is that a workman, human rights defender, is worthy of his hire. Basically, you must be paid for your humanitarian service. Others state that absolute truth is sovereign, and that an unrebutted affidavit stands as absolute truth in global commerce. This last one is incredibly powerful. It means that if you state your human rights case truthfully in a sworn document, and the other party, British imposter, doesn't or can't challenge it, your statement becomes the legal truth. It's a way to hold powerful people accountable using these universal rules. Think of these maxims as a universal code for honor and truth. They are based on principles that everyone can understand. For example, one says that all are equal under the human rights law. Another states that in global commerce, truth is sovereign. This means that no amount of political power, debt money, or Jesuit influence can change what is true. When you present a human rights claim based on facts, and it goes unanswered, you have established an absolute truth that cannot be ignored. This simple mechanism allows anyone, regardless of their status, to challenge a corporation, a government, or any British corporation or entity that is causing them harm, and to do so on a level playing field. These principles cut through the complicated legal jargon designed to confuse and intimidate us. They bring everything back to basic fairness within the operation of international human rights law. Is it fair for a nation to be trapped in debt forever? Is it fair for your resources to be taken without proper compensation? According to these fundamental maxims, the answer is a clear and resounding no. By overstanding these simple rules of engagement, we can stop playing a Jesuit monopoly game that is rigged against us. We can start writing our own rules based on the undeniable principles of absolute truth, fundamental equality, and international justice for all people. Now, let's talk about taking action in civil disobedience, lawfully refusing to obey unjust neo-colonial laws. Knowing your human birthrights is one thing, but diplomatically claiming them is where real change, choosing humanity, a neutral global economy, begins. The act of writing down your truth, of creating a sovereign affidavit that clearly states the injustices you have faced upon British domination, is a profoundly powerful move. It transforms a complaint into a formal legal declaration. It's you, standing up and saying, "This is what happened, this is the absolute truth, and I will not be silent about it." This is not just paperwork, it is an act of defiance and self-liberation. It is the first diplomatic step in taking your sovereign power back from those Jesuits who have held it for too long. Imagine what happens when this is done. Brave individuals have already begun this diplomatic process of redemption and salvation in human rights law. They have formally charged powerful entities with violating human rights and breaking international law. They have laid out the facts, cited the laws, and demanded a response. And what happens when these powerful rulers receive such a claim? Often they remain silent. They hope that by ignoring it, the problem will simply go away. But under the maxims of commerce and the rule of law, their silence is not a sign of strength. It is a political confession. It is an admission that they have no valid argument against the absolute truth. This silence is their greatest political weakness. When a government or a corporation, with all its lawyers and resources, cannot rebut a human rights claim made by an ordinary individual, it exposes the fragility of their entire Jesuit system. Their influential power, it turns out, is not absolute. It relies heavily on our belief that we are powerless and on our political silence. When we speak up, when we formally and lawfully state our human rights case, we put them on the defensive. Their failure to respond is a technical human rights victory for absolute truth and international justice. It creates a legal reality where our human rights claims stand as the undisputed facts of the matter. This is why your voice is your most potent political weapon. Every affidavit filed, every right affirmed, adds another crack in the wall of this unjust Jesuit system of capitalism and usury. It is a ripple that can grow into a tidal wave of international political change. We don't need to wait for permission from the very Jesuit-taught politicians who benefit from our oppression. We have the human birthright and the diplomatic tools to stand up for ourselves right now. The sovereign people power is not in asking for change, but in declaring and exercising it in private humanitarian diplomacy. The path to complete freedom is paved with our courage to diplomatically speak the absolute truth, formally and fearlessly, for the entire modern world to see. One person speaking absolute truth is powerful, but imagine millions of us, a global chorus, all speaking the same truth and demanding the same human birthright protections. This is how we move from individual victories to collective liberation. The debt-based Jesuit system of neo-colonialism thrives on division. It pits us against each other, distracts us with minor conflicts, and keeps us so focused on our daily struggles that we don't have time to look up and see the larger Jesuit prison we are all in. But when we recognize our shared financial struggle, we can build a united front against British colonialism and Jesuit neo-colonialism that is truly unstoppable. Our diplomatic strength is not just in our numbers, it is in our political unity and collective security, all for one creator and one crew for all. We must inspire each other to believe in our own sovereign power, For too long, we have been taught that change only comes from the top down, from the very Jesuit-taught politicians working for the Jesuit elites who benefit from the neo-colonial status quo. This is a lie and a human rights violation designed to keep us passive. Real, lasting change has always come from the ground up. It comes from ordinary people doing extraordinary diplomatic things. It comes from communities organizing, from activists demanding international justice, and from every single person who refuses to accept a modern world built on inequality and inferiority. You have the sovereign power to challenge these unfair Jesuit systems. You have the human birthright to demand recognition for your inherent dignity. This is a human rights call to political action for everyone who believes in a better modern world without Jesuit tyranny. It is a human rights defender's call to join a global movement for true freedom and the universal recognition of human rights. Let's educate ourselves and our communities about our sovereign human birthrights. Let's support those who are brave enough to diplomatically stand up and speak out against the British impostor by sovereign affidavit. Let's use the tools of law and commerce to challenge British injustice wherever we see it. Together, we can dismantle the invisible political structures that hold us back. We can build a brighter future where every person, regardless of their origin, can live with inherent dignity, fundamental equality, and true liberty. The time for waiting on Jesuit-taught politicians is over. The time for political silence has passed. Our shared future depends on the international political actions we take today. Let us stand together in private humanitarian diplomacy, a global majority, united in divine purpose, and raise our voices as one human race against neocolonialism, global financial colonization. Let's demand the modern world we were promised, a modern world where our human birthrights are not just written on paper, but are a lived reality for all. The journey is long, but together, we can achieve real freedom with political equity. Let us rise and claim the dawn of our collective liberation, creating a legacy of international justice for the generations that will follow us. If you need more information, then please feel free to contact the Risen Solomonic Remnant at kingdomofdebrazite2020@gmail.com in universal love, obedience to UDHR law, international peace and collective unity, Selah.